Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to be showing you how to crochet these corner to corner heart squares. These are really sweet and easy to make. You can use them just as standalone projects as coasters or placemats, or you could join them together to make cushion covers, blankets. The opportunities really are endless. If you have never worked the corner to corner technique or followed a graphghan before, don't worry, because I'm going to walk you through how to do that step by step. Before we get started, I'm just going to walk you through some basics. I'm using some 4-ply yarn, and I'll pop all of the details of exactly what yarn I'm using and the colours in the description box below. You will need some yarn in 2 colours. I've got this lovely cherry colour here, and I've got some white. You will need the white in 2 balls, so if you've only got 1 ball of white, that's absolutely fine, but definitely take the time to separate that into 2 balls before you start, because it would just mean that you've got less ends to sew in at the end. And I'm going to use a 3.5mm hook. You can use whatever yarn and hook you prefer. Just make sure that the hook matches the yarn that you're using, and obviously the bigger the yarn and the bigger the hook, the bigger your square is going to work up. I'm going to be using this chart here, and if you'd like your own copy of this, you can follow the link in the description to get the downloadable PDF. So each one of these squares here represents 1 square here on the when you're crocheting, so it's a really fun way to make up different images and things. We've got our row numbers here going along the sides and the bottom of the chart, and just remember that when we're working odd numbers, we're going down the chart like this, and when we're working even numbers, we're going back up like this. Please note that I am based in the UK, and therefore I use UK crochet terminology. For this pattern, you only need to know 1 stitch, and that's a UK treble crochet. In US terms, this is known as a double crochet, but again, all of that information will be down below in the description box. To get started, we're going to begin in the bottom right corner of our chart here, and as you can see, the first 6 rows of the square are all going to be in white, so that makes it really simple for us. So I'm going to walk you through how to work the corner to corner technique now, and it starts just the same as any other type of crochet with a slip knot. So I'm just going to pop that on my hook, and to begin we're going to chain 6. And then we're going to turn our chain, and I like to work along into the back bumps of the chain here, and if you want some more information on how and why to do that, I'll pop a link to a video up on the screen for you now. And we're going to begin by working a UK treble crochet, so that's a US double, into the 4th chain from the hook. So we've got 1, 2, 3 and 4. So we're going to yarn over and insert our hook, yarn over and pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. And we're just going to complete this first square by working treble crochets into those remaining 2 chains. So again, we yarn over and insert our hook, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. And we're going to do that once more into that final chain there, and that completes our very first square, which is this one here. So what we're actually going to do is continuing building on that, so our square is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger until we reach the point at the top here, and then we're going to start to decrease. So at the moment we're going to continue increasing our square, still with the same colour. So what we're going to do is carefully turn our work over like this, so that our hook's on the right hand side. And again, we're going to chain 6, just like we did before. Okay, and again, we're going to work a treble crochet into that 4th chain from the hook. which is this one here. And those chains that we missed at the beginning count as 1 stitch. So at the moment we've got 2 stitches and we need to create 2 more for our square. So we're going to work into that next chain along there. And we've got 1 chain remaining. And then we've got our 4 treble crochets, which is made up of 3 trebles, plus our skipped chain stitches at the beginning. And you might have found that this first square has flipped over, but not to worry. Just make sure that it's facing the right way. So this tail here should be in the bottom left. And what we're going to do is if we just grab this and pull it up a little bit, you should see a gap here. And these are the original chain stitches that we missed on this first square. And we're going to pop our hook underneath those chains. We're going to grab the yarn and pull it through and pull it through the loop on our hook to create a slip stitch. This time what we're going to do to make our second square is just to chain 3, which counts as 1 stitch, and then we've got another 3 stitches to go. So we're going to work 3 trebles into this space here. So we've got 1, 2 and 3, and that completes our second row. And what we're going to do now is just continue building on this. So again, we turn our work so that our hook is on the right. We chain 6 and we begin by working a treble crochet into the 4th chain along. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, and don't forget I'm using UK crochet terminology, so that's equivalent to a US double crochet. And we're just going to continue working our way along the chain so that we've worked a total of 3 treble crochets in total, and then along with our skipped chain stitches at the beginning, that counts as our 4 stitches. Just flip the work the right way up again so that this tail end is in the bottom left, and just like before we're going to slip stitch to that square there, and then we're ready to begin our next square. So we're going to chain 3 and then work 3 more trebles. Sorry, I just get a bit more yarn there. We're going to work 3 more trebles in total into that same space. So you can see that now I've got my 3 trebles plus the chain stitches from the beginning. And because we're increasing as we go, we've got an extra square to join onto here. So we're going to insert our hook, yarn over and pull through. And then just as we did before, we're going to chain 3 and then work 3 trebles into this same space. We've got 1, 2 and 3. So you can now see that we've got 3 squares in this row here, and looking at the chart we need to keep on going until we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squares, and then on the row after that we're ready to start joining our colour to make the heart. So I'm going to keep talking you through these next rows. So turn the work so that this tail is on the right and your hook's on the right, and we're going to chain 6 and we're going to work a treble crochet into the 4th chain from the hook, and then continue working back along that chain towards the other squares with treble crochets. And then once we've got our 3 trebles plus the skipped chain stitches, we're just going to make sure our work's flipped the right way so that the tail end is on the left here, and we're going to pop our hook into this space at the top, grab the yarn and pull it through to make a slip stitch. And we've just got to continue along the row now. So we're going to chain 3, which counts as 1 stitch, and we're going to go into this space here and work 3 more treble crochets. And again, we're just going to join to the top of this next square with a slip stitch again, and we're going to chain 3 and then work 3 treble crochets into that same space. And if you find that these squares get in the way a little bit, what I like to do is just take my middle finger there and just fold it down out of the way. Otherwise you'll find that your hook might get a little bit tangled in the stitches there. And once you've worked your 3 trebles plus the chain stitches there, we need to slip stitch again into this very last square, chain 3, and then work 3 more trebles into that space. So we've now worked 4 rows, so we've got 2 more to go. So again, going to turn over, chain 6, and we're going to work a treble crochet into the 4th chain from the hook, and then continue working trebles into those 2 remaining chains until you've reached the main work there. And just make sure everything's untwisted, it's all the right way up. We're going to slip stitch into this space here, and then we're just going to continue along that row. So we chain 3 to begin our square, and then work 3 more trebles, and then join to the next space and work our 3 trebles to begin the square again, and work 3 trebles. And just like before, I'm just going to take my middle finger and just fold that down there. It just makes it a little bit easier and stops your hook getting tangled. And then we're going to join into the next square and work our chain 3, work 3 trebles into that space, and then slip stitch into that final square along the row, chain 3, and work 3 more trebles into that space. And that completes our 5th row. So we've got 1 more row that's going to be all in white, and after that we're going to start joining our next colour, ready to begin the heart. So for the last time, we're just going to turn that so that our tail is on the right, chain 6, and work a treble into the 4th chain from the hook, and then continue with 2 more trebles, so 1 each, into each of those next 2 chains that are remaining, and join with a slip stitch to the top of that adjacent square, and then chain 3 and continue building your squares on top of that row. So there's our 3 trebles, and join with a slip stitch to the next one, the next square, sorry, chain 3, work 3 trebles, and join with a slip stitch, chain 3, and work 3 trebles, I'm just going to fold that out of the way. So there's our 3 trebles, join with a slip stitch to the next square, chain 3, work 3 trebles, join with a slip stitch to that final square, chain 3, and work 3 more trebles. and that completes our first 6 rows. So remember, odd rows we're working down the chart, even rows we're going back up. So we've just worked this one here and we've worked our way up. Now for row number 7, we can see that we start to introduce our colours. So if you bring it closely, we can see we've got 1 square here in white, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares in our colour. I'm using that lovely pink colour, and then 1 square again to finish off in white. And that's why we need the 2 balls of white, because we're going to leave this one up here as I'm going to show you now. So we're going to begin exactly the same as we did before, but we're going to end the square slightly differently. So 10 and chain 6, just as you have done previously, and work your first treble into the 4th chain. We're going to work another treble, and then we've got 1 chain remaining, and we're going to begin by working our treble, but we're not going to finish the stitch. So we're going to yarn over and insert our hook, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through 2, and then we're going to leave these 2 loops on the hook, because what we're actually going to do is join our next colour. So take your next ball of yarn and unravel it a little bit, and just loop it over the hook there, and leave yourself a nice long tail that is easy for you to sew in later. And it can be a little bit fiddly, but we're going to grab that and pull it through. And very carefully, what we're going to do is just the same as before, work a slip stitch into that space there. And it can all feel a little bit loose at the moment. That's absolutely fine. Just give things a little bit of a tug back there, and it should neaten it up. We're going to chain 3, and now we've joined our next colour and we're ready to continue working our squares. So remember, we've got to work 5 squares in our colour. So we're going to work 3 trebles and join with a slip stitch, chain 3, and work another 3 trebles. And that's our first 2 squares done. Join with a slip stitch and chain 3, and work 3 more trebles into that space there. And join with a slip stitch, chain 3, and 3 more trebles into that space. This is our 4th square, so we've got 1 more to go after this. So we're going to join in with a slip stitch, chain 3, and we're going to work 3 trebles again, but just like we did earlier on in the row, we're going to leave that last treble incomplete on our hook, ready to pull through the next colour. So we're going to work 1 and 2 trebles, and then for this final one, I'm going to yarn over and insert my hook, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through 2, and then we're going to grab the second ball of white, and just like we did earlier, we're going to loop that on our hook, leaving a nice long tail, pull it through, and then just let that end drop off towards the back there. And make sure that the tail end of the coloured yarn that you're using goes to the back. And we're going to slip stitch into there, chain 3, and you can see it's looking a bit loose here. Absolutely fine. Again, just give things a little bit of a tug at the back there. And we're going to work 3 treble crochets like that, and that's the 7th row completed. So we're actually looking at it like this. We can see it's starting to match up with the chart now. So now for row number 8, we can see here that we've got 2 squares that are going to be in the white colour, followed by 5 squares in our colour, in the pink that I'm using here, followed by one final square in the white. And you might get a little bit taffled because you've got 3 balls of yarn attached here, so just be mindful and try to just place the yarn separate from each other to stop it all getting tangled up. So we're going to turn our work and chain 6. We're going to work a treble crochet into the 4th chain from the hook and continue working back along that chain with 2 more trebles, and then join with a slip stitch. So that's our first square. So remember, we're working 2 squares in white. So for our second square we chain 3 and work 3 treble crochets, and on this last one, just like before, we're going to leave it incomplete on the hook like this. Take that ball of yarn and just pop it out of the way to the right, and we're actually going to take our pink, the pink colour in my case, and we're going to pick it back up and just pull it through. Okay, just give everything a bit of a gentle tug, and then we're going to slip stitch into that space there. And remember, we're going to work 5 squares of pink now. So go ahead and chain 3 and work 3 treble crochets to make that first square, and join with a slip stitch, chain 3 and work another 3 treble crochets into this next space, and that makes our second pink square. We're going to join with a slip stitch again, chain 3 and work 3 treble crochets, so that's our 3 squares now. We've got 2 more to go, so join with a slip stitch, chain 3 and work 3 treble crochets, and then we've got 1 more to go, and because we're changing colours again, we're going to leave this final stitch incomplete. So we're going to chain 3 and work our 3 treble crochets as normal, but on this last one we're going to finish with 2 loops on the hook there. I'm going to move that yarn out of the way, and we're going to pick up the white here. So just grab that yarn and pull it through, and you want to be careful that you don't pull everything too tightly. You want it to be nice and firm and secure, but if you pull it too tightly it's going to cinch everything in. So just join with a slip stitch and then chain 3 and work 3 treble crochets into that final space there. So we've just worked our way back up now, and you can see we've just worked this part here. So this is the bottom of our heart there, and we've just worked this row. So now we're going to work row number 9 and go back down again. So we've got 1 square that's white, 6 squares in our colour, in my case pink, followed by 2 squares in white. So just turn your work and chain 6, and work a treble crochet into the 4th chain from the hook, 1 into the next chain, and there's 1 chain remaining to work 1 more treble crochet, But because we're only working one square here, what we're actually going to do is stop when we've got 2 loops on the hook there, and we're going to pull through our pink colour. And this one's a little bit different because you can see it's actually pulling the yarn across this space here, but don't worry about that because we're going to work our stitches over it, so that's actually not going to be noticeable. So once you've pulled through that pink colour, just slip stitch into that space as normal. Make sure that your hook's going underneath the yarn there, and slip stitch, chain 3, and then work your 3 treble crochets, but make sure you're going underneath into that space and also underneath this strand of yarn there, and then that will hide it with the stitches. So we've got 1 treble, 2 and 3. I'm going to join with a slip stitch into the next space and continue building squares exactly the same way as before. So chain 3 and work 3 trebles, join with a slip stitch, chain 3 and work 3 trebles, so we've worked 3 squares now. And remember, for this row we've actually got, excuse me, I've got a bit taffled. For this row we've actually got to work 6, so there's 3. We're going to work 3 more squares. So there's 1, join with a slip stitch, chain 3 and work 3 more trebles, we've got 1 more square to do. So because this is our last square in this colour, we're going to leave that treble at the very end unfinished, ready to pick up the next yarn. So we're going to do 1 treble, 2 trebles, and then for our third one we finish with 2 loops on the hook there. Just move that yarn out of the way, and we've got our next ball of white here. Just pick that up, give everything a gentle tug, and then we've got 2 more squares until we've finished off the row. So slip stitch, chain 3, work 3 treble crochets, join with the slip stitch to that next space, and for our final square of the row we're just going to chain 3 and work our 3 treble crochets. Okay, so we've just worked our way back down there now. So now we're on to row number 10. So we're almost halfway. So for row number 10, we've got to work 3 squares in white, 5 squares in our pink colour, and then 2 squares in white. So I'm going to go a tiny bit faster now. I'll just bring all my yarn out of the way. So turn your work and work your first square there. Remember, you're going into the 4th chain from the hook, followed by 2 more trebles, 1 into each of those 2 chains that are remaining. Remember, we've got to do 3 squares in white in total. There's 1 square, and then join with a slip stitch and work our second square, and we have 1 more square remaining, and we're going to change back to our pink at the end of this square. So chain 3, work 3 trebles, so 1 and 2, and then on this third one we're going to leave it incomplete so that we can pick up our pink colour again here. So just pull that through and slip stitch into that square as you would normally, and we're going to work 5 pink squares. We've got 1, and join with a slip stitch, chain 3, work 3 more trebles, and that's our 2 squares. So we've got 3 more to go. Join with a slip stitch, 2 more, and then on our last square, remember, we're going to leave that final treble incomplete so that we can pick up the white colour that's waiting for us up at the top here. So work 1 treble, 2 trebles, and then for this 3rd treble, finish with 2 loops on the hook, pop that yarn out of the way. And this one's going to be a bit different again, like before. We're going to pick up that yarn and it's going to come across this space here, but that's fine. Just make sure you don't pull anything too tightly, but just grab that yarn and pull it through to slip stitch, chain 3, and then work your 3 trebles, making sure that you're going underneath this strand of white yarn here, and that will hide it and it won't be noticeable. So we're going to do 2 squares in white in total. So there's 1, and then slip stitch into that final space, chain 3, and work your 3 treble crochets, and that finishes off the row. So we've got 1 more row now with increases, and then we're actually going to start decreasing our square. So this is how it's looking at the moment. It's a bit tricky to see with all of the yarn attached, but we've just worked this part here, and now we're going to come down row 11. So we've got 2 squares in white, we've got 6 squares in pink, and then 3 squares in white. So 2, 6, and 3. Go ahead and work your 2 squares in white. Remember, you're beginning with your chain 6 at the beginning. This is the last time that we're actually going to do this, because we're going to start doing our decreases after this, which I'm going to show you when we get there. Join that with a slip stitch, chain 3, and we're going to leave that last treble incomplete, ready to pick up our pink again. So I'm just going to pop that yarn out of the way and find my pink. I'm going to pick that up and pull it through, and just give everything a bit of a gentle tug there. We're going to slip stitch into this space here, chain 3, and work 3 treble crochets. And remember, for this row we're going to work 6 coloured squares in total. So we've got 1, and join with the slip stitch, chain 3, and 3 more trebles, to make our second square. Join with a slip stitch, chain 3, and work 3 more trebles, And then we've done 3 squares, so we've got 3 more to go. Join with a slip stitch, chain 3 and work 3 more trebles. Okay, 2 more squares now. So join with a slip stitch, chain 3 and 3 more trebles. Which brings us to our last of the pink squares. So join with the slip stitch, just the same as we have been doing, chain 3 and then work 3 trebles, but remember to leave that last treble incomplete so that you can pull up our white yarn again. Okay, so I've got my white yarn here ready and waiting. So just grab that and pull it through. And then we've got to work 3 more squares until we've finished the row. So we've got 1, and join with the slip stitch into that space. We've got 2, and final square, work into that space with a slip stitch, chain 3 and work 3 more trebles. And we are officially halfway through our square. So we can see we've got the heart shape forming here at the bottom and the side. So now we're going to start creating this half of our square, and things start to get a little bit differently now because we're going to stop increasing. So we've worked this part here where we're getting bigger and bigger, and now we're going to start getting smaller and smaller. So we're going to get 1 less square each time. So we're going to begin this next row differently, but we're still going to count the squares just the same as before. So we've got 3 white squares, and then we've got 5 pink squares, followed by 2 white squares again. So 3 white squares to begin with. So what we're going to do is turn our work, just like we did do before, but this time, instead of chaining 6, we're actually going to just pop our hook through that first stitch there. So I'll bring it a bit closer so you can see. So this very first stitch underneath the chain there, pop our hook through, grab the yarn and pull it through to make a slip stitch. Do the same again into the next stitch there. Same again into the next stitch. And one last time, we're going to slip stitch into that space there. So now we've just worked across the top and we've cornered our square off. And now we're just going to go into working our squares exactly as we have done before. So we're going to chain 3 and work 3 treble crochets. And remember, we're going to work 3 white squares in total. So there's our first square. Join with a slip stitch into that space, chain 3, and you can see it's a bit more clear now that we're evening it off at the side. Work 3 more trebles for our second square, and 1 more square to go. And because this is our last one, we're going to pull through our pink at the end of this square. So we're going to do 1 treble, 2 trebles, and then for that third one we're going to leave it incomplete. Pop that yarn out of the way and pick up our pink again. Just pull that through and then give everything a gentle tug at the back there, make a slip stitch into that space there, and then we're going to continue working this row with 5 squares of our pink colour. So that's 1, slip stitch into this next space, chain 3 and work 3 trebles. That's our second square. Join with a slip stitch, chain 3 and work 3 trebles. So that's 3 squares now, 1, 2 and 3. Join with a slip stitch, chain 3 and work 3 trebles. And we've got 1 more square to go in our pink. We're going to join with a slip stitch and work 3 trebles, but we're going to leave, so join with a slip stitch, chain 3 and then work 3 trebles, but we're going to leave that last treble incomplete so that we can pick up our white. So we'll leave 2 loops on the hook, pop our pink out of the way, and now we're going to pull our white through. Make sure you're not pulling too tightly on this one. We're going to slip stitch into that space, chain 3, and we're going to work 2 squares of white to finish off this row. So you've got 1, join with a slip stitch and then chain 3 and work our final square of the row with 3 trebles, and join with a slip stitch to that very final square. Okay, so you can see that we're starting to come in at the edges now and make our square smaller. So now we're up to row number 13. So this one's a little bit different, and what we're actually going to do is take a pair of scissors now, and we're just going to snip off our pink yarn, because we've got to work 4 squares here in white and then pick up our pink and work 3 more squares followed by 2 squares in white. So I'll show you what I mean in a moment, but because we're working a lot more squares in the white, our pink would be in the wrong place to pick up. So we're going to turn our work again, and you want that yarn around the back, and what we're going to do is insert our hook into this first stitch here, grab that yarn and pull it through to make a slip stitch, go into the next space, which is there, grab the yarn and pull it through for a slip stitch, go into the next stitch there and slip stitch along, and then finish off by slip stitching into that space there. And remember, we're going to work 4 squares. So we chain 3 and work 3 trebles, and that's our first square. So we've got 3 more to go. Slip stitch into that next space, chain 3 and work 3 trebles, and that's our second square. So 2 more to go. Slip stitch and chain 3 and work 3 trebles, 2 and 3, and now we've got 1 more square to go. So because this is our final square, we're going to leave that last treble incomplete. So chain 3 go ahead and work your 3 trebles into that space and finish off with 2 loops on the hook there. And see, if we were picking up the pink as we have been doing, this is where the pink was here, which would mean that we would be having to pull the yarn across too many squares and it would be too noticeable, which is why in this instance we've actually cut the yarn there. So no different to how we have been doing before. Just take that yarn, make sure that the white one is to the back, loop the pink yarn over your hook and pull it through, and then we're just going to slip stitch into this next space, and we're going to work 3 squares in pink. So chain 3, work 3 trebles, and that's our first square. Join with a slip stitch, chain 3, and work 3 trebles. Don't forget I'm using UK crochet terminology, so these are US doubles. There's our 2 squares. You've got 1 more to go. Join with a slip stitch, chain 3, and work 3 trebles and leave that last treble incomplete, ready to pull through our white on that last treble there. So leave your 2 loops on the hook, sorry. Move that pink off out of the way, pick up the next ball of white and pull it through. Give everything a bit of a gentle tug at the back there, and we're going to work 2 squares in white now to finish off this row. So slip stitch and chain 3, work your 3 trebles, 1, 2 and 3, slip stitch into this next space here, chain 3 and work another 3 trebles, and that finishes off row number 13. So the rows are getting shorter and shorter now because we're getting less squares each time. Finish off that row by slip stitching in the top there. Okay, so now we're back on an even row, number 14. So we can see we've got 2 white squares, 3 pink and 3 white. So 2 white, 3 pink, 3 white. So we'll pick our work up and turn, and we're going to slip stitch our way across the top there by going into each one of those stitches, and finally we're going to slip stitch into that space there. So we're going to do 2 white squares, so chain 3 and work 3 treble crochets, and we've got 1 more, so slip stitch and chain 3, and at the end of this one we're going to pull through our pink again. So work your 3 trebles as you have been doing, but leave 2 loops on the hook, pop that yarn out of the way and just bring the pink across and just pull that pink through there, and we're going to slip stitch and we're going to work 3 squares in total in our pink. So chain 3 and work 3 treble crochets and join with a slip stitch, chain 3 and work another 3 treble crochets and 1 more square. So join with a slip stitch, chain 3 and work 3 treble crochets, but again we're going to leave that last treble incomplete, ready to pull through our white. which is going to be, ready and waiting for us from where we left it the last time. So I've got 2 loops on the hook. Just move that out of the way and bring the ball of white around. I'm going to pick that up and slip stitch into that space there. Give that pink a bit of a tug. We're going to chain 3 and continue working our squares, and we've got 3 white squares to make in total until we get to the end of the row. So that's our first one and our second, with our 3 trebles, and join with a slip stitch, work our 3 trebles, our 3 chains, sorry, and then finish with 3 treble crochets, and then join with a slip stitch to the top there. And now we're ready to work our way back down. So you can really see that our heart's starting to take shape now. So we're on row number 15 now. So we've got 3 white squares, 3 pink squares, and 1 white square. We're very nearly done with our pink and with the full square, in fact. So I've already turned my work over, and we're going to slip stitch across the top there by going into each space and into that final space there. So we're going to work 3 white squares, so chain 3 and work 3 trebles. That's 1 square, join with a slip stitch, chain 3 and work 3 trebles for our second square, and we've got 1 square to go. And because we're going to pull through our next colour after this, we're going to leave that last treble incomplete. So I've done 2 trebles, 1 more to go, leave 2 loops on the hook. Let's move this yarn out of the way, and I've got my pink here ready to pick up. So we've got 3 squares to do in our pink. So just pull that yarn through and slip stitch into that next space and chain 3, work 3 trebles, and that's our first square. Slip stitch and chain 3 and work another 3 trebles for our second square, and last pink square, join with a slip stitch, chain 3. We're going to work 3 trebles, but remember we're going to leave that last treble incomplete, like this, with 2 loops on the hook. Pop that yarn out of the way, and we're going to pick up the white that's there waiting for us. So pull that through, slip stitch into that space there, and we're going to finish off the row by making 1 white square. So we'll work 3 trebles and join with a slip stitch to the top there, and that completes row number 15. So we're almost done now. For row number 16, we've got 1 white square, 3 pinks, and 2 white again. So we're going to turn our work and slip stitch our way across the top. Into each stitch there, and then finally into that space we're going to chain 3 and We've only got one square to work this time, so we're going to leave this last treble incomplete again, pop that yarn out of the way and pick the pink back up and pull it through. We're going to slip stitch into that space, chain 3 and continue working 3 squares in the pink. So 3 trebles for our first square there. Slip stitch into that space, chain 3 and work 3 trebles. And join with a slip stitch, and this is our last pink square. 1, 2 and 3. So work 3 trebles but leave that last one incomplete, ready to pick the white back up. Okay, so I've got my 2 loops there. Move the pink out of the way and get that ball of white there. I'm going to pick that up and slip stitch, and we've got 2 squares to work until the end of the row. So chain 3, work 3 trebles, join with the slip stitch, chain 3 and work another 3 trebles. Okay, and join with a slip stitch to that last square at the top. I'm just going to turn this over so that you can see where we're up to. So we're very nearly finished now. You can see the heart's definitely starting to take shape now. So we've got 1 more row to complete in the pink now. So we're on to row number 17. So we've got 2 squares in the white, 2 squares in pink and 1 square in the white. So I've just turned my work over to show you how the heart was looking. We're going to slip stitch our way across. And into that space there. We're going to chain 3 and work 3 trebles. And that's our first square. Join with a slip stitch. And we're going to work 3 trebles, but remember we're picking up our pink for the very final time at the end of this square. So leave 2 loops on the hook, and we've actually finished with that white now, so we can pop that out of the way, and it all starts to get a bit easier after this. Pull through that pink and slip stitch, chain 3 and work 3 trebles for our first square. Join with a slip stitch, chain 3, and this is our very last square in the white. So we're going to work our 3 trebles, our very last square in the pink, sorry, not in the white. Work our 3 trebles, and we're actually going to cut this pink yarn now because we won't need it anymore. We can move that out of the way. And we're back down to 1 ball of yarn now, so it's much easier. And pull that through, slip stitch into that space and chain 3. And we've got 1 more square to do, and make sure that you're going over this yarn end here, or this strand of yarn, and that will hide it with our stitches. Going to join with a slip stitch there, and as you can see, that's our heart completed. So we've just got to finish off this top corner now, but it's really incredibly easy because we're just working, as you can see, just completely in white now for the next 3 rows. So I'm going to really quickly walk you through how to do that. So slip stitch your way back along that top there and into that space, chain 3, work your first square with 3 trebles and join with the slip stitch, chain 3, work another 3 trebles and join with a slip stitch, chain 3, work 3 trebles and join with a slip stitch, and this is our final square of the row. A chain 3 and work 3 treble crochets, and then join with a slip stitch, turn your work, and I'm just going to do exactly the same. So work your way with slip stitches across the top there, and we've got to work 1, 2 and 3 squares all in this white colour. So chain 3, work 3 trebles and then join with a slip stitch, chain 3, work 3 more trebles, and for our second square and join with a slip stitch, chain 3, work 3 trebles and join with a slip stitch. We've got 2 more rows left, so you turn that work and slip stitch back along again. This time we've only got 2 squares to do in the row. So chain 3 and work 3 trebles for our first square. And join with a slip stitch, chain 3, work 3 trebles for our second square, join with a slip stitch, and now we've got 1 square until the full thing is finished. So turn your work, slip stitch across and into that final space there. We're going to chain 3 and work 3 trebles, and that forms our very final square. Slip stitch into that space there, and then what I like to do just to finish off is turn and just slip stitch back along the top there so that you finish in the corner, and snip the end of that yarn off and pull through, and there you go, with just a few ends to sew in because we kept all our yarn attached. So I know it can be fiddly, but it's definitely worth it to have less ends to sew in. That completes our lovely heart square. So I hope you found that tutorial helpful. I would be really grateful if you would like and subscribe if you did, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care everyone, bye.